welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Karina Joy. If you are not, welcome back. Today we are going to be doing a discussion on The Last Sin Eater by Francine Rivers. Okay, so this month I am doing a read along with this book. It is not too late to join in. The main reason why I wanted to do a read along for this book is I feel like this is a very underrated Christian fiction. A lot of people talk about redeeming love, and while I do somewhat feel like there's a place for that one, I feel like Francine Rivers did a much better job talking about redemption in this particular book than she did in Redeeming Love. Redeeming Love, she wrote when she first got saved, and I feel like this one does a much better job of just showing the depth of Christianity than Redeeming Love. And I feel like every Christian should give this a read at least once, because it just really does show the condition of man and that we all desperately need a savior and we all need redemption from our sins. Okay, if you don't know much about Francine Rivers actually used to be a romance writer in the secular world. Then she got saved and decided to start writing Christian books. The problem that a lot of Christians have with Redeeming Love is there's parts of the book that have a lot of content that most Christian books don't have, and a lot of Christians, I think, are put off by that. I have to say that, it was her first book after writing romance, and if you read all of her books, she tends, from there on, there's less and less of that stuff. This one having no content like that in it. And you can just tell the growth in that redemption story, which has its place, and this redemption story. So this was written about 7 years after Redeeming Love, and by far I think it is better in that context. Okay, so a little bit about the book. First of all, what is a sin eater? That is a great question. Okay, so in Welsh traditions, a sin eater was a person that would eat a ceremonial meal at the end of someone's life, and they would end up taking the sins of that person onto themselves. This particular book does not take place in Wales. It takes place in the Appalachian Mountains in the United States. And essentially, these immigrants have come over from that part of the world, and they've kept their traditions. And here we have the last sin eater. So we really learn about some of that culture and why they wanted this to still continue on in their new home in the United States. And yeah, so this is about their sin eater who takes meals at the end of people's lives and takes on their sins. The sin eater is somebody that is supposed to be shunned and feared because he's a very evil person, because he's willing to take on sins. In this book, we follow a little girl named Katie. She is kind of a tortured soul. She ended up doing something a while ago that caused her family a lot of grief. Because of it, her mother no longer talks to her or gives her any sort of affection. Her father's kind of in the same boat. He talks to her, but she can tell that there's just this wedge between them. And the only one that really gives her any kind of love are her grandmother and her brother. In the first part of the book, her grandmother passes away, and she ends up, being wrecked with grief over that, and she ends up going to her first funeral where the sin eater is present. So when they go to the funerals for people where the sin eater is going to come and take their sins, they have to take a special meal to the sin eater, and he comes and he is dressed in a certain way, so that no one can see his face, and he comes and eats the meal, drinks the wine that they give him, and then says a little "I take your sin" type of statement, and he leaves. That whole time they're not supposed to look at them. So Katie is told not to look at this guy, and when he comes, he sounds very kind, and she just can't help but look at him. Because of her transgressions that have caused her family to turn their backs on her, she is very desperate for somebody to take those sins away, and so the sin eater intrigues her for that reason. So far, if you're reading along, I just got through chapter 6. They have not mentioned what she did. You just know that it has to do with her little sister's death, and that her mom is really struggling with grief, and that's all we know so far. The themes of redemption in this book, this little girl is just desperate to be forgiven for what she's done. She knows she's wrong, and she doesn't know how to get forgiveness for her sins. So there are 2 other characters in the book. There's the healer. Her name is Gervaisa Odera, and then there's another woman named, the other lady's name is Ms. Elda. Now, the healer and Ms. Elda are friends of her grandmother's, and so when she's grieving about her grandmother, she kind of confides in them, asks them questions about the sin eater, but the healer is telling her, you don't need to be messing with all of that stuff. You need to not think about it and just move on with your life. But Ms. Elda kind of feels like she needs to find the sin eater and figure out what the deal is about it. And so she tells her where he lives. In the midst of all of this, I want to read you a couple of passages leading up to something that happens that kind of creeps everybody out. So here's this first passage. It says, she's talking to her mom. She says, "Can I do anything for you, Mama?" She looked at me, and her pain was terrible to see. I had cracked the shield of silence that protected her, and her heart spilled out through her eyes. I knew she couldn't abide me so close in her grieving. In truth, my presence only served to rekindle her sorrow and tighten the chains around her heart. She was held captive in her losses and found no pleasure or even solace in my existence. I thought then it would have been better if I had died. So this, I think I forgot to mention, Katie is only 10 years old, and she's going through all of this just very complex grief from this scenario that happened in her family. Something I found really intriguing about the whole thing, they have this religious system that kind of revolves around this sin eater, but it's a Christian system. So they believe in God, they believe in Jesus, they believe in the judgment day, they believe in all of this, but they still believe they have to have this sin eater, and they don't realize that Jesus is the one that takes their sin. So let me read you a little bit about that. It says, "We're only allotted a certain number of years to walk this earth, and then our time comes. Your granny passed on, and another enters in. Jillian O'Shea had her baby 2 mornings before we laid your granny to rest. There was room aplenty for a new baby without granny leaving. I know, child, and let there be no misunderstanding. She did not die so that the babe could come. I mean only that her passing is not the end of everything. Life goes on, and your granny will rise again on Judgment Day. Most likely she'll see Jesus coming down from heaven, from where she's resting high on that hill. No, my dear, it ain't her I mean. It's the living concerns me most. Your granny's resting easy now, sleeping until the end of time comes upon us all. Okay, so there's one more character that I wanted to talk about today. There is a little girl that follows Katie around called Lilybit. Now, Lilybit just kind of appears one day and nobody really likes her being around. It's kind of implied that no one can see her and that Katie is talking to nothing. But listen to this. I think that Lilybit is sent by God, and here's why. It says, "Oh God, if only I could die. Maybe then the sin eater would come and take my sins away. Oh God, would that he could do it now, while my heart beats and I still breathe, so I would not have to live with pain." And then she came, sudden and unexpected, like a shaft of light as the sun starts coming up over the mountain. Okay, so that's talking about Lilybet. So Lilybet calls her Katrina Anise, and Katie is saying, that's not my name. But she really likes the sound of it. And she says, wouldn't it be nice to be someone special, someone loved? It would be a great relief to be anyone other than Katie Forbes, even if just for a little while. I'm Lilybet, she said, when I stayed in my solemn silence. My father told me about you. So that's why I feel like Lilybet's from God. I've read this book before, but honestly, I don't remember what the answer is about Lilybet. I just know that she is woven throughout the book. She kind of just appears in places, and so that's why I feel like she is a supernatural presence in the book, but I don't think she's like a ghost or a demon or anything like that. But yeah, so far I'm really enjoying this book. I don't know if this discussion is scatterbrained. I feel like it's completely and totally scatterbrained, but I would love for more people to join in on this so that I can have a discussion with other people. And then maybe I won't feel quite so scatterbrained, but I'm really enjoying seeing the foundation laid for forgiveness and redemption of sins, and I can't wait to see where this book goes with that. Okay, so that is my discussion for The Last Sin Eater for this week. I will be doing one once a week until the end of this read along. If you would like to join in, I will have the information posted below. Obviously, I've already been reading for a week, so I'll have the reading schedule if you want to try to catch up, but it's not a very long book. It's 344 pages, so it is definitely something you could still read and finish in the month of August and join in on the conversation. This week, I don't feel like I did any spoilers just because I'm in the first few chapters. Next week, what I will do is talk about the book partially non-spoilery, and then I will let you know when I'm about to spoil things so that you can turn it off until you've gotten to that point in the book. But that is that discussion for this week. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.